It's time to make some noise. Speak your mind and own your strength. Hey everyone, I'm back, and today I'm really excited to introduce you to one of my friends and colleagues, Andrea Owen. Andrea is an author, a global speaker, and professional certified life coach who helps high-achieving women maximize unshakable confidence and master resilience. She has taught hundreds of thousands of women tools and strategies to be able to empower themselves to live their most kick-ass life through speaking, her books, coaching, and her wildly popular podcast with over 3 million downloads. She's the proud author of 2 books, which have been translated into 18 languages and available in 22 countries. Her latest book, Make Some Noise, Speak Your Mind and Own Your Strength, is coming in 2021, which is right now, August. Oh boy. It's live. You can now get it. So head over to where books are sold. Make Some Noise with Andrea Owen. We're diving into today's topic, all things. What I really love about Andrea is her unapologetic way of having uncomfortable conversations. And today we talk about a lot of different topics. But what I love about this conversation today, and probably many conversations that I'm going to be having in the future, is unpacking, right? Unpacking and unlearning. This is not about putting more pressure on ourselves as women. This is not about doing more, finding a more perfect way. It's that we've actually done the hard work. We've overloaded ourselves to get to this point in our lives. And now it's about unpacking, unlearning, taking the pressure off, and leading your life from a more joyful, aligned place. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I've been saying it a lot to people that I'm talking to, is, the world does not benefit or need more disempowered women. Every day when we turn on the news, we're finding something else that's going on in the world. And I think when you live in a culture and you are in a position to make an impact, it is your human right to step into feeling good, because I truly believe that as women, mothers, caregivers, whoever you are in the world, we have been conditioned to feel disempowered, and for other people to take control over us. And to slowly take that power back is an unlearning and an unfolding. And it happens one day, one moment at a time. So I'm really excited for you to dive into this conversation with Andrea and I. And I want to hear from you. So I would love, love, love for you to take a screenshot. You can tag me on Instagram at Heather Chauvin, and you can definitely you can tag Andrea Owen as well. AndreaOwen. Tag Andrea. And what else? You're welcome to text me 313. Of course, guess what? Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to forget my frickin' phone number. So now I actually have to go in and figure out what my frickin' text messaging phone number is. I got it. Okay. 313-710-5199. I knew that. 313-710-5199. It's a phone number that I use just for podcasters solo in my community. So don't worry, you're not bugging me. I want to hear from you. What was your biggest takeaway from this conversation with Andrea? Just send me a little text, 313-710-5199. I think the more we have these open conversations as women, the more we dive into our brave zone, the messy middle, doing the uncomfortable work to feel more aligned, but not only more aligned within ourselves. That is being a role model for the woman next to you. That's being a role model for the next generation of women watching you. And every human that, regardless of gender, that you come into contact with, this is how we are going to make an impact in the world. You have privilege, you have opportunity, and it is your duty and your job to feel freaking good, because this is where we make an impact. So let's dive into today's conversation. Go grab a copy of Andrea's book, Make Some Noise, and let's make magic happen, ladies. Okay, now we're recording. Do you know how many times I walk in here? He's actually been really good. He's only like a year old. His name's Steve. And yeah, sometimes I come in here and the poop like blends in with the carpet, and then I just step on this like hard shit. And it's so tiny because we have a bigger dog too.
It's better than being mushy shit.
I know.
Let's look at the upside.
Yeah. Speaking of shit, I was actually just doing an IG live with somebody, and the Purelator, which is FedEx in Canada, I don't know, is Purelator in the States, but came to pick up my stool samples during the IG live. And I was like, one moment, please. I need to go get my frozen poop out of the freezer so that I can give this to the Purelator guy.
I've had to collect that for one of my children. And it was like and I've changed a lot of diapers, but doing that was way worse. I'd rather change a diaper than have to go into the toilet in the bucket that they provide my husband came in the bathroom and I had a bandana. So this was before COVID, before we had masks. I had a bandana over my face. I had rubber gloves on. I had the windows open and the fan on, and I had to take breaks because I was gagging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My kit actually came with little French fry containers. So I am never going to be able to eat French fries at like a fair again, because they legit were that red and white. I was like, this is a French fry container. And I had to put it on the floor. And I'm like, I'm done. Great. This is how I will never eat French fries again out of a container like that.
It was so gross. And there was like 3 different vials we had to put it in. And I did make my husband help me because I'm like, I am not doing this by myself.
Yeah. The things we do for love and health and happiness.
And pets.
Oh my God. Well, welcome. Welcome
everybody. Hi.
You would think we're starting off with poop. So let's see where the conversation goes.
I always brag that I'm not afraid to talk about things that make people uncomfortable.
Well, that's actually, I was like, how are we going to connect poop in this conversation? But I believe that's a great lead in. So Andrea, we've had a few conversations, but you have a new book coming out.
I do.
This is book number 3. Mm-hmm. Make Some Noise. I'm like, where is it? Make some noise, speak your mind, and own your strength.
That's right.
So I'm curious how you feel about this one. What made you, I hate this question. What made you write this book?
Well, and the only reason I love when people ask me this question is because it's a legitimate, it wasn't just like, I had this idea and I decided to run with it because this is what I do for a living and it pays the bills, which is a valid reason for writing a book. I'm not saying that it's not, but for this one in particular, I had written 2 self-help books before and was thinking about writing my 3rd and just got this nagging feeling in my body that I could not write another self-help book without pointing out the uncomfortable truth, the elephant in the room, that is our culture that raised us and by us, I mean women, people that identify as women and who have grown up with that identity, that, we live in a patriarchal culture. And I want to preface this by saying patriarchy hurts everyone, not just women. And it definitely, there are some rules that we all were trained, for lack of a better word, and conditioned to adhere to in order to fit in order to be liked and loved and accepted and rewarded. And those are the very same things that women are coming to me with that they struggle with. So it's the imposter complex, the people pleasing, the perfectionism, the numbing out, like all of these really difficult things pointed to the bigger root of the problem that I felt like I could not write another book without addressing this.
I'm sorry. My child is in the background talking to the dog. It is March break here. So we're going to see how this goes. I have like 5 boys at my house right now. Does anyone want to have these conversations? Everyone wants to talk about the pain and give me the quick tips and strategies. And I can't be asked that question anymore of give me the quick tips and strategies. And I'm like, what quick tip or strategy has helped you in the past? So what's your perspective on this? Because we can see similar pain and we'll take it from different angles, right? And we'll get there, but people don't want to look at it. So how do you approach a conversation that's uncomfortable?
I feel I have compassion for people, and I have as much patience as I can muster. I mean, if they want to work with me privately, it's probably not a good fit. If they're just wanting, quick tips, tools, and I almost said stools, tools and strategies. And I also feel like this is part of my personality, that I had the ability to do this. As a child, I always was asking, just curious, as many children do, just curious about things, but very inquisitive and asking deeper questions. Like at church, why do you think maybe Jesus was just unconscious for 3 days and not really dead? Like the questions that people didn't want to hear. So I think I have a high tolerance for uncomfortable conversations. I wouldn't say I like them and enjoy them. I just have a higher tolerance. So I do keep that in mind. Like I have patience for people that it's not always comfortable, but what else do we have? I also am obsessed with the root of the problem. This is why I got trained in shame work in 2014, because I was teaching about the inner critic and negative self-talk and noticed the connection between shame. And I was like, I have to get trained in shame work because this is a bigger part of the problem, which then led me to this work because it's even further down into the root of the problem. So that's part of my obsession.
I love that your book is like shit to start doing, shit to stop doing.
Yeah, that's just how I write. I thought the editor was going to want to take that out, but she left it.
So let's talk about that being too much for people, too much, not enough. And then let's get into like white feminism.
Yeah, let's talk about it. All right. Too much and not enough. The first 2 chapters, I was adamant about having them be, take up some space, shine too bright, because I know a lot of people only read the first couple chapters of a self-help book. I'm like, what do I want people to know from the get-go? And these are the things that, we've all heard them. You feel like you're too loud, you're too emotional, you're too sensitive, you're too fat, you wear too much makeup, you are too energetic, just too much of something. And then on the other side of that same coin is the not enough. I don't even think I need to further explain that. And so it's a dichotomy that's slightly complicated, but I think every woman can relate. It's universal in some way. And so when I talk about taking up space in the chapter, I'm talking about internal and external. So the internal might be taking up space with your emotions and like learning how to be okay with whatever you feel, that nothing you feel is wrong. What you're responsible for is your behavior, all the way to things like taking up space with your body. And I want to say really quick too, Heather, that this isn't about, okay, here's what to do, and you need to start doing it, and then you're going to be doing it the quote unquote right way. This is more about really starting to recognize these behaviors for what they are and starting the process of unlearning them on a consistent basis, possibly throughout the rest of your life. Because I've been doing this work for a long time, and I still struggle with saying I'm sorry too much, putting too many exclamation marks in emails. Like the bottom line of the book is that we have been trained to put everyone else's comfort before our own. This is why we hesitate to be visible online when we're starting a business. This is why we don't, that we always get out of the way when someone's walking towards us, that we don't ask for the armrest on the airplane. It's like everyone else's comfort comes before ours, whether that's their physical comfort, their emotional comfort, their schedule, all of these things. And so again, I just want to clarify that it's about noticing it very quickly so that you can get curious about it. Don't beat yourself up over it, and start to just question the culture that tells us that this is so. Yeah. And it goes into more detail in the book, but yeah, it's about unpacking and getting curious, having self-compassion for yourself and moving forward.
Love it. I hear, what's your relationship with, I'm sorry?
What?
When people, what's your relationship to I'm sorry? Like saying I'm sorry.
Oh. Your Canadian accent threw me for a second.
What do you say?
No, we say the same thing. It sounded different. I thought you said something else. We definitely say the same thing in the States. And also I've heard from some of my other Canadian friends that in your culture that I'm sorry is kind of like an excuse me, that it's not necessarily an I'm sorry all the time, or maybe that's just an excuse they say so they can keep saying it.
I think I think it could be both. Yeah. But it is kind of like, oh, let me move. Let me accommodate your needs.
My relationship is, I catch myself in the moment when I say it, and I've gotten a lot better at pausing before I say it to decide whether it is warranted or not. I also talk to my daughter about it a lot. She's 11, and I gently call her out and tell her she does not need to apologize. And then when it's to me, I tell her to take back her apology. And I can see that that's a little bit of a struggle for her, but like, I want this to become habitual so that she doesn't, I want the habit to be that she's noticing more quickly, and instead saying something like, excuse me, or thank you, or just not sorry at all.
Mm-hmm. You dedicated the book to your daughter, correct?
I did. Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about that and talk about the lineage.
You know, I think as hard as we try as parents to instill the values in them that are important to us, to not make the same mistakes that maybe our parents made inadvertently with us, the culture is still going to get a hold of them. Mm-hmm. And like I said, she's 11, my son is 13. And I've noticed, especially with her, that it's already started. And so I've just been planting the seeds of conversations with her. And I also buy her books that I want her to read and just put them in her room, like with a note that, from me, and like whether she chooses to read them or not is up to her, but I want her to have them. And
she's only going to read the first 2 chapters.
She probably will. So I hope they're good. And, I thought to myself before I wrote this book, if there's any book that I want her to read as my legacy to her, as more or less a love letter to her, it's this. If I died tomorrow, if she has this, I know that I have told her the best things that I want her to know about being a woman in this country and in this culture.
I think it's a really important conversation to have, because I think as women, we have this subconscious, I don't want to fuck up my kids. And when you are living from that place and then you're absorbing from culture, hustle, burnout, shame, guilt, like there's more. Mm-hmm. Do more. And I don't know about you, but when I was writing my book, and I've looked at your book, so I kind of know, but I was like, damn, I can't blame my parents anymore. I gotta chapter about that. I gotta let this go. I can't sit in this identity and trauma. Like I gotta let this go. And there's a weird feeling around that. You're like, on the other side of this, if I have to take some radical responsibility.
Yeah. And that is so hard. I think that's one of there's some big nuggets in there. And so tomorrow's my 46th birthday as you and I are recording this.
Happy early birthday.
Thank you. And so I know some things. I know I'm not old, but I know some things. And here's what I know to be true. And I have still going through trauma therapy, and I had a really great family of origin, but we all have stuff to varying degrees. We all have stuff. And I don't know that we ever really let it go. I guess that you need to define that for yourself. Like, what does it mean? I just don't want people to think that we get to a place where the memories don't affect us at all. Like I told my therapist when I hired her at the beginning of COVID, she's like, what are your goals? Which I think is every therapist hopefully asks you that when you go to see them. I said, I want my trauma to just be I don't mind if it stings when I think about it. I just don't want it to take me out. And I don't want it to bend my behaviors. In other words, I don't want the choices that I make and the thoughts that I have and the beliefs that I have about myself and other people in the world, I don't want them to be shaped from that trauma. And I think a lot of us walking around, it is shaped from that trauma. So yes, we get to a point where we have to move forward. That's the term I look at, and do whatever we can to heal from it. Do we need to forgive them? That's probably a conversation for another time. I know a lot of experts say yes, and then a lot of experts say no. But for me, it was about, and this was the hard part, realizing that my parents were mortal human beings who did the best they could, who were also raised by humans, by imperfect humans, and had their own stuff. And that was so painful, partly because for me personally, it required me to see not just their humanity, but their pain that they had gone through. And as someone who identifies as an empath, I did some somatic trauma therapy where I was remembering certain memories of arguments I had when I was a teenager with my mom and feeling her pain, that she wasn't actually mad at me because I had an F in history. She was in pain because her marriage was falling apart. Yeah. So things like that. That's an example. I know I went kind of deep with that question, but
no, I love
the front of my mind.
I mean, I love deep. And I also think, it gives people an idea of, oh crap, like, what do you think okay. So I'm going to ask you this question. Do you believe in, and I'm always like curious, and I know you have thoughts on this, but like the current state of the wellness culture. Mm-hmm. But everyone buying into like, what's my purpose? I got to find my purpose. And then
it's total bullshit.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, I want to preface this by saying that I think it's our human nature. And I don't know if there's science that proves this, but I feel like somebody's talked about this. Probably someone's written a book about it, that we as humans, part of what drives us forward is our need to matter, is our need to have purpose. And this is how, from what I understand, that this is how communities thrive, is like when you have when you're putting in an effort and you matter, like your voice matters, your effort matters, things like that. Mm-hmm. And I like, yes to all of that. And at the same time, I think where people get hung up is this thought that there is this thing, this sort of tangible thing, this golden ticket that they're looking for, that's going to be their purpose with a capital P. Mm-hmm. And my opinion is that it's like your journey and evolving into the person that you're becoming every single day. That's your purpose, is to live your values. Like, if you don't know what your values are, like, stop this podcast episode, Google, how do I find out what my personal values are? Not only just write down the names of what the values are, but what does that mean? Like, what's important about the way that you live your life? What does that look like on a day-to-day basis for you? To me, that's my purpose. Like, am I living courageously? Am I taking responsibility for my life? Am I leaning into trust? Like, those are my top values right now. That's my purpose. I don't know if being an author is my purpose. I don't know if it's life coaching. That doesn't totally feel like it is. It feels a little bit along the lines, but to me, it's like my values, showing up for my family, showing up for my community. That's my purpose. And that's so much easier than like a profession.
Yes, because people are always looking to monetize this thing. And I'm like, why are you have been living your purpose? Or like, it's inside of you. And it's like this little journey you got to go on. But I remember when I started, I had a coach that her thing was around purpose. It's like, she had like a purpose statement. She had her like, whatever. And I'm like, okay, I'm doing all the work. I'm like, but I'm not feeling it. Like, there's a disconnect here. What is going on? And then after, I'm like, it's just to feel good. Like, yeah, enjoy, like whatever like you said, whatever your values are, but what feels good to you? What you got to look, you got to become the detective. It's not, yeah. And I feel like everyone can have their own we all have our own language and opinion around it as well. And again, we're shifting from whether it's trauma or cultural crap to like all of a sudden the shiny object of like, we have the golden ticket over here. And it just feels very toxic. And I'm always encouraging people like, what feels good to you? What do you want? You know, like what is it that you are seeking? Not, oh, that looks good. I'll fit myself into that mold.
Mm-hmm. What gets you fired up? Like that's, what breaks your heart? What brings you so much joy? And then that might change depending on what season you're in.
Mm-hmm.
If your kids are little or if they're older, if you're retired, if you're an empty nester, et cetera, et cetera. But we all have something that gets us fired up. And if we don't, trust me, I've struggled with depression before. Like that's a real thing. But the vast majority of us, if we are of sound mind and if we are well mentally, have something that fires us up, go follow that.
Yeah. And also, just look on Facebook and see what's really pissing you off. There you go.
Right.
You'll figure out what fires you up real quick.
Do you want to fight? Yeah. Not saying that you have to fight it, but yes, that's the thing.
Exactly. Can we talk about pleasure?
Yes. Can we?
I'm just saying that. Can we talk about pleasure?
I'm curious what your take is on that and like why you chose to ask me that question. Can I turn the tables for a second?
No, you're not allowed.
This is my show.
When I started my personal development journey, I was introduced to Mama Gina. Okay. And I associated pleasure with anything sexual.
Okay.
And of course, that made me very uncomfortable. And then I had to like connect with my body and realizing the trauma that was there and going through that process. And now my perspective of pleasure is like so much bigger and probably non-tangible, where it's like, to me, it's always like, what's the desire? What's the like, and how can I do this in alignment? And how can I bring life to this? And that can be in any aspect of your life. So pleasure to me now is very different than when I first was introduced to it.
Yeah. And if you would have asked me 10 years ago, like to talk about pleasure, the first thing I would have thought of is orgasm or sex. And it's, I had a coach a couple of years ago, and that was her assignment to me, was just, there was this prescription of have more pleasure in your life. And I was like, oh my gosh, what does that even look like? So in it, and I also write about it because again, women are, this, Heather, like we constantly put ourselves last. So it's not necessarily about mani-pedis and bubble baths and things like that. And if that's your thing, that's fantastic. But what are these small things? Like, how do you want to move your body? It doesn't have to be a CrossFit if that hurts your body, or if you have a shoulder injury like I do. Like, what are these small things that bring you pleasure? For me, it's a lot of times is a manicure, but this might sound so ridiculous, but it's like ending work at 3:30 in the afternoon because I start really early. That brings me so much pleasure.
Yeah.
And shifting gears back over to sex. This is also about, and I'm so glad you brought that up, not just about asking for what you want in the bedroom. Cause I talk about the orgasm gap in the book, which was super interesting research, but about, if the thought of asking for what you want in the bedroom makes you uncomfortable, there is definitely something there, and you deserve to have healing around that. And you deserve to find someone and seek professional help that can help you, because we live in a culture, like, you want to talk about the most uncomfortable conversations for women. And for people in general, but I think especially for women, it's money and sex. And me too. Like I called her my sex coach, who wasn't a sex coach, to specifically walk through my entire timeline of sexual partners and unpack things and look for patterns as to like how that led me to the habits that I had now and what I can do to help them in order to help my marriage. And it helped tremendously. And it was one of the most uncomfortable things I've ever done. Now,
the way you positioned that was like, you walked in and you were like, here you go. This is my timeline. Or did she make you do that?
I literally had a timeline.
I love it.
Well, it was a journal. And I also have a really good memory for things like that. I remember first and last names, and I can count on fingers and toes the amount of sexual partners I've had, but I remember every single one. And she was like, so these aren't just the people you've slept with. These are the people that you've had, just like any kind of sexual interaction. So it was a long list, but it was really interesting to go through that inventory and look at patterns. There was some great experiences in there, and there was some really not so great. And I will say this, the biggest pattern that we saw was that I allowed my pleasure to be optional.
Interesting.
With the vast majority of my sexual partners. It was just like a bonus.
We just need to have silence around that. And then people going, oh shit.
Yeah.
And
I am not alone in that.
No, I don't even know if I've ever met a woman that cannot resonate with that.
Yeah. So it was about unpacking what led to me believing that it was okay for me to accept that my pleasure was optional. And it was a long list of things. A lot of it was our culture and being raised that this is just the way it was. And the mixed signals that we get growing up about, don't be slutty, but also be attractive enough to quote unquote, get a man. And it's complicated.
Yeah. But don't get pregnant.
Don't get pregnant.
Yeah.
Good girls like you don't get pregnant. And if they do, they certainly don't have abortions.
Yeah. And if they do, we're just never going to talk about it again.
We're never going to talk about it.
You're just going to shove that shit down, and it's out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah,
and then
worry about that too.
when anything pops up later, don't know why. Don't know why. How do you want your reader to feel after they have read your book? All chapters, not just the first
all
two.
the chapters, not well. And it also is one of those books that you can skip around. You don't have to read it like first to last. You can skip around. And I want them to feel you might not like this answer, but I am not going to be upset if they feel angry.
It doesn't matter what I think.
That's true. I could give you the easy answer of like, I want them to feel empowered, inspired.
I don't like easy answers. Come on, give me the real truth. Make some noise. Make some noise.
I want women to be angry if they find that in themselves, because I talk about some hard truths in there. We should be angry at the culture that raised all of us. And it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable for us. It's unacceptable for the women and girls that were born after us and that will be born later. Like, I don't want this for my daughter and my possible grandchildren and all of the women after us. I want the culture to change, and it takes generations. We have made progress, and it's very slow, as cultural changes are. Yeah. So that's how I want them to feel.
Yay. And I think too, when you're just like slow and steady, right? You're like, I'm going to be me. I'm going to put this book out into the world. I'm going to talk about it. I'm not here to save the world. Like, I'm just here to do the work.
I'm not here to save the world. I'm here to tell people and write about what I feel like what is my message that was bestowed onto me from some airy fairy in the sky, angel's guides, whatever you want to call it. But I do feel like it was given to me for that reason, to touch the right people.
I know in the last few years, because we've always gone back and forth, like checking in here or there, you've been a huge advocate on, when I say advocate, but like friend, mentor in my own book writing journey, especially at the beginning phases when I was shitting my pants. And, for the last few years, this has really big bubbling up for you. And I want to talk about like, I don't even know what to say, but like social justice, allyship, like how can we show up as white women in a world that, like this is not the same experience for everybody.
Yeah. Well, I want to preface this by saying, I see and acknowledge that when we have this conversation that, we're two privileged white women speaking about this and, in essence, centering ourselves around the conversation. And I really want to point to Black women who have done the labor educating about this. So Rachel Cargill has a great, which was my first real education in this topic, called Unpacking Unpacking White Feminism. And I can send you a link to that to drop it in the show notes. It's completely affordable and well worth watching this webinar. And Austin Channing Brown is another one. She did a 20-minute Instagram live in April about white feminism. It's not long. It's definitely worth the watch. But I'll just tell you that my first experience in learning like what that was, and that I was definitely someone who participates in white feminism, is so it was a picture from the 2016 Women's March it was January 2017 in Washington, D.C. in the States. And there was a Black woman who had a sign, and the sign said, "Are all you nice white ladies going to be at the Black Lives Matter march next week?" Mm. And I saw that and I thought to myself, no, I'm not. And that's a problem. That's a problem. Mm-hmm. And I had someone point out to me, it was a Black woman, and she said, every time you're fired up about men, assaulting women and catcalling and harassment and all of these things, put yourself in our shoes. Like, this is how we feel about whiteness. How you feel about sexism is how we feel about whiteness. And so just that perspective shift changed everything for me, changed absolutely everything. And also, as a leader in this community, if I have Black and brown people who are signing up for my programs and buying my books, it is my responsibility to educate myself on these topics, to understand as best I can their lived experience. It's different than mine. Are many of the problems universal? Yes, but theirs are layered on with differences. And so I did my best to highlight that in the book, and got, experiences from different kinds of women. But I know I forgot what the question was, but I had like a long preface.
It's all good. I don't even remember what the question was. I really just wanted you to like dig into that not everyone has the same experience. And we're sitting here with a lot of opportunity that other people do not have or have even been given just by, and it's not hard work or luck or anything like that. We didn't meditate more than somebody else.
Yeah, it's unearned.
Yeah.
This is another book, and I know you can see me and other people can't, but it's called Hood Feminism: Notes from the Women That a Movement Forgot by Mickey Kendall. And just in the introduction, I highlighted more than I didn't highlight. And she talks about like the feminist movement is largely white, and it's benefiting mostly privileged white women who are getting closer to white men and what they have. And that's missing the point of feminism. And we're leaving behind these deeply marginalized groups like women in poverty, these women who can't even pay their bills, but yet the focus on, and what you see a lot in the media, is like the pink pussy hats and, Boss Babe. And it's been commercialized, the feminist movement. And I am not here to say that I am perfect at it. I'm still learning about it and still figuring out where my place is in all of this. I just wanted to mention it for people who might be new to the topic.
And I think it's just important, like you've done, is to reference back to where they can really learn about the topic, or even some of those breadcrumbs or starting places. Mm-hmm. And from even this conversation there is no place for perfection here. And there is no place for, this is a lifelong learning and unlearning process. And we need to stop with did I get it right? Am I on the right path? And the work that you're doing, I think a lot of us have, it's like, oh, fuck, you got to be in the messy middle. Like, stop. There's no templates out there.
There's not. In the messy middle, it's that thing, I think, for a lot of us that are high achievers. Some people listening might be type A, just, go-getters, getting things done. That is an uncomfortable place to be. In the human brain, like, we want an answer. We want an itinerary and a schedule. and we want to be able to check off the boxes. Me too. I want that too. And at the same time, like, that's not what real life looks like. And I always tell people who are really hung up on wanting to know if they're on the right path is exactly what we were talking about before. Does it feel good to you? And is it in honoring, that's not grammatically correct. Is it honoring your value system? Like you are always on the right track if it's honoring your values. If it's not, if it's out of alignment, if it's out of integrity for how you want to live your life, then you're not.
Awesome. I could talk to you forever, and I'm looking at the time.
Can we?
Can we? Yeah, we could go in many different directions. I wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I always love people like you, like the gems. You're like, there's so much noise out there. And I'm really grateful that you're just following the little spark inside of you that's like, what's the conversation I want to have? What's the book I want to write? Not what's the strategy that someone else is telling me to? Because I think there's a bigger message behind that as well.
Yeah. Can I say one more thing?
You can say many things.
I will say just one more thing to not send people in 100 directions. So I think it was the last time I was on your show, we talked about sobriety and
great drinking.
That's right. We talked about
that was a big one, actually.
That was a big one. And I just want to say for people who might be newer to your podcast or missed it, that maybe drop that link in the show notes for people.
Yeah, we'll have that there.
I got a lot of DMs saying like, thank you for telling your story and opening my eyes to this topic. And some of them quit drinking. Some of them just looked more closely at their drinking. And it's another topic that's super close to my heart, and anyone I can help, I want to.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. Cause I will tell you, after that went out, same thing. And here we are in 2021. And I know that is an extra special topic with what we've been dealing with in the last year. I don't know. I mean, we could go forever and ever. So I'm like, I want to say it, but I can't. So now that I can't, I'm like, we got to stop. We got to stop. So that's good because there's more goodness from you. So where can people get the book? Dive into the book. What do you have coming up? All those things. And depending on when I don't have the date in mind. So just let them know when the book is out and what you got going on.
So August 31st is like the official pub date, but a lot of times, it does come out a little bit early than that. And there's book bonuses. There's a workbook that's really beautiful that I had made because I ask like over 100 questions in the book. And so I made a really pretty work where I didn't actually, somebody else did, but I wrote it. I didn't design it. So there's just 2 pages for people who know that they're ready to go buy the book. It's wherever books are sold. And then also if they go to yourkickasslife.com/MSN, that's where they can find everything. It's short.
MSN, make some noise.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. And did I see that you were renaming the podcast, or no, that was just
Yes.
Okay. Tell me.
Well, I can tell you now because it's already out. Yes. The podcast is also called Make Some Noise.
Ooh, love it. Thank you. And your Instagram handle changed.
It's so many changes in 2021.
I'm like, who are you?
I am Hey Andrea Owen now. Well, I want to speak to that for a second because we're talking about evolving and purpose and things like that. And I've evolved a lot since 2010 when I started Your Kick-Ass Life. And I started my podcast in 2013 and it was the same name. And I just thought, I don't love this term. Like I'm a different person now. I've evolved a lot.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted something new. And so there it is.
You're just like a little hermit crab running from one shell to the next.
Sideways. Exactly. I'm exactly that.
Andrea, thank you. Thank you. Go get your book, everyone. And go send Andrea a DM.
Yay. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Well, that's it. And I wanted to thank you for listening today because I truly believe you are exactly where you need to be. And now I have a favor to ask. In exchange for the value you've gained from this free podcast, I'd be forever grateful if you would leave us a review on iTunes. Share the show with at least one woman in your life who you feel would benefit, and or take a screenshot and share it on social media. And always feel free to tag me at Heather Chauvin. The world does not benefit from your guilt and fatigue. The world needs more women who are willing to unlearn everything they've been taught. Women who are courageous enough to feel good and not let guilt run the show. I believe you are that courageous woman. To see if my community and coaching is the right fit for you and your big vision, the relationships you desire, the money, time, energy that you know deep down you are capable of creating, then head on over to heatherchauvin.com/work with me. That's Heather Chauvin, CHAUVIN.com/work with me. And take the next step in the right direction. Taking a stand for how you feel means you are taking a stand for how your children show up as adults. And if you have a personal question or topic you'd like me to answer on the podcast, text me 313-710-5199. 313-710-5199. You are so worthy of feeling good. Now go do some scary shit.